always trying to find different ways to explain things. And we all know of a certain trans woman who made a couple videos explaining trans stuff using food. So I was thinking maybe I'll give my shot at it using something that I'm more familiar with, which is software engineering. So it's gonna be kind of weird. You don't need to know anything about it. All you need to know is I'm just gonna talk concepts and stuff like that. It might take a few to kind of pick up and understand what I'm saying, but I'm gonna try to draw a parallel with gender theory, because what I'm wondering, or maybe observing or thinking, is that I think people who are heavily invested in gender theory maybe don't understand that everybody else has their own niche areas of expertise and all the things. So, okay, hold on. If you're another software engineer, this information is, I know you might be like, that's some of it. Okay, so for everybody else, we're gonna talk about, y'all know Apple. So Apple's gonna be an entity. Then there's we're gonna specifically say Visual Basic, but that's Microsoft. So everybody knows Apple and everybody knows Microsoft. And then there's another thing called Java, which is a very, very large platform as well. For this thought experiment, I want you to pretend that you're Java. You don't need to know what that means. All you know is that you got a cup of coffee or tea to try to pay attention to what I'm about to say. So Java and Visual Basic, they look very, very different. However, typically someone who's a software engineer will have a comfortability in one. They'll probably specialize in that one. However, they can kind of read loosely the other kind, and they can kind of understand different ways of approaching and all those things. So again, we're going to be pretending we're in the Java perspective. So at this point, as the Java person, you go and you look and you start kind of looking into this VB thing a little bit more. Visual Basic, VB. You look into a little bit more and you really like it, and it makes more sense to you. You understand how to structure everything better. You're more efficient in your tasks. You feel better about your productivity, like a lot of different positive things. You feel like you're able to contribute more. But the problem is that you're so familiar with Java that really understanding all the different nuance and the VB things, you don't necessarily need to go there, but you don't necessarily, how do you make a bridge and use the things that VB is using? Enter a third option. That one is called C#. That's actually what I code as my first language. So C# is used, C# will run the same as VB. So if someone hands you something and they say I made it in C# or I made it in VB, it can run on the same machine. So with this example, you used to be Java. You've now gone over to you're the same thing as far as how you're able to function in society, producing products. Your methodologies can be helpful. You can augment things in unique ways. However, visually, when you're working, you still look like you're working in Java. You're just now using some of this platform for more whatever. Now again, I know this is all really kind of confusing, and this is, drawing apples and oranges to try to make examples, but just bear with me. So at this point in time, we've kind of talked about two things, and I'm kind of trying to give an example of, Java and VB would be the male or female, whichever your perspective is, the core genders that we inherently had an understanding of up until recently. Then we'll say that transitioning original, like, as we used to see it, would be just going from one to the other. So again, from the perspective of who are you as the Java, you transition. So at a core level, in your anatomy and your structure, you still have a lot of the same things. But you're now like over here. So like I know it's grasping at straws kind of, but I'm trying to just give like I hope you're following. So each of these areas of work have different things that they run on. And so the two I was talking about operate under Microsoft. Microsoft has a whole mix of different things. They have deployment strategies, they have best practices, they have something that's called agile development, which is like a life cycle management for project and life cycle of the application. Each one of those have different little things, like you need to have scrum ceremonies, and you do this, and you have backlog refinements and scrum plannings, and all these different little integral parts that really contribute to making the entire thing functional within the understanding of how those two nuanced areas work. Making those nuanced areas, because you may have people who are specialized in the areas of code, and you need to pull them all together. But to the rest of the world, it's just, that's computer stuff. I don't understand what you're talking about. Ha ha ha, tune out. Like you might be tuned out already. And now let's throw that third one into the mix, and that is Apple. Now, Apple runs on something completely different. It's called Objective-C, and I never bothered learning it because it looked like it was a pain. That language is going to have all of its own intricacies and deployment strategies and all the different things. But most people who know Java, okay, again, sorry developers, most people who know Java and most people who know like software.net, Microsoft stuff, they don't know Objective-C because it's kind of like they just don't. So if we tie all this back to where I'm trying to go with explaining being trans and being, in the gender theory expansion, what I'm trying to explain is most people can follow an understanding of, okay, there's two different kinds of language groups. One's called Microsoft and one's called Java. Cool. All right, three? All right, just don't keep throwing stuff at me. At the end of the day, then, they're all like, but you're, hold on. So then, you might even try to say something like, well, I'm a .NET engineer and I prefer C#. And then you might be like, well, what's that mean? Well, really, at the end of the day, it means I like code that looks like this and it has this kind of a structure, i.e. born genetically coded something. And I do the same thing as these people over here in different ways. That's all you really need to know. Okay. Like, most people don't care. They're not going to follow that. To most people, it still comes down to... So, again, with all of this stuff, when we start having things that are not a joint consensus on what pronouns and what I hear people calling the moving target, it's very difficult. And while we're in these pockets defending the theory behind it that you may have studied, the problem is that's a very new field of study and education, one that hasn't been around for a very long time. So the rest of the population hasn't even had time to learn, adapt trans stuff, let alone gender theory continuing to expand on these things. And in the same way that software engineering has industry standards and all those other fun things, we have laws in place, and we have those industry standards in place to protect people. Your sensitive information in medical software. We have laws in place. We can't change things too fast, because when we change things too fast without taking the time to make sure things are concise, everybody can digest the information, we start having chaos and everything starts to fall apart. So this is a long rant. I'm expecting not many people will listen to this, but I don't know, again, cake pops and cannoli chick at Disneyland, so whatever, I'm just a software engineer.